Okay, so here's the report, and let's just go ahead and skip down to the school section and just take a look at some of the basic math here, which will, to start with, it'll be pretty easy. You see right here we have this little chart with revenues, expenditures, and the difference, which will determine whether annexation is a financial gain or loss or a wash for the schools. All right, and here we have these three columns are the different scenarios. The first one, maintaining current city limits. The second one, annexing only the three northern areas under consideration on the annexation map, which they label here as commercial properties, but as we've talked in another video, these are really a mix of commercial and residential. And just briefly to reiterate, about 40% from what we can find from a couple of different measures, about 40% of the total population in all the annexed areas are in these three northernmost regions. And then the last column here is the full annexation, all 6 areas, which for various reasons we understand this was, and I guess remains, the lead option. All right, so this top line here, revenues, we're told that this is pretty solid figure. We know what the property values are, we know what the tax rate is, and therefore it's pretty easy to calculate what the revenues would be in these different scenarios. Skipping down the next line, the expenditures. When we're talking about the school expenditures, the expenditures are almost wholly dependent on how many students would be coming in with annexation. So the more students that are coming in, the more expensive it is. The revenue doesn't increase, but the expenditures go up, okay? So whether it's financially advantageous depends very much on this number of how many students are coming in through annexation. Okay, so how do we determine in the report how many students are coming in through annexation? All right, let's move back a little bit, and we come to this paragraph here. City of Decatur Schools, City Schools of Decatur, worked with a company called Rosser International to estimate how many students. They came up with this number of 450. Now, we have talked in an old video, Pat Harrell did a video, which I encourage you to look at, on this study by Rosser, and we sat down with folks from Rosser, and for various reasons, including a change to the map since the time they did the study, that is what areas were going to be annexed, Rosser revised that number significantly upward. But the thing that I want to focus on here is this next sentence. If you look, I'm reading here, if you look at the number of residential parcels and assume the areas being annexed are similar to the city of Decatur, then a top-end estimate would be about 600 students. Okay, so the basic idea here is clear. What if the annexed areas are similar in their student population to the city of Decatur? And the report states that they want conservative estimates, and so it makes sense that they would want to anticipate the high end here. All right, now let's just briefly jump back to this chart, and you'll see that they're considering here that range, 450 to 600 on the expenditure side. If there are 450 students coming in, expenditures, they're saying 5,900,000. At 600 students, expenditures 6,200,000. Revenues 6,200,000. So it just so happens that 600 students, that high-end estimate, leads us to the break-even. So with 450 students, there's a slight financial advantage, 250,000. At 600 students, it's break-even. Okay, so only $250,000 difference by adding another 150 students. They're saying that's an annual operating expense. All right, so let's go back and let's see how did they come up with this number of 600. All right, the report says if you look at the number of residential parcels, we have not really been able to figure out exactly what that method is, but there is a pretty simple method for doing this. The report says that there are 7,800 residents in the annexed areas. And what we're looking for is, what if those areas, the student population is about the same as in the city of Decatur? Well, in the city of Decatur, about 15% of the population are students in the city schools. That's about in keeping with national average, actually a little bit lower than the national average. So what we do is we take 7,800 and we multiply it by 15%. And we get, well, not 600, but almost double that figure, 1,170. All right, so now let's skip back here and we see, roughly we'll say, very rough math here, if you have twice the number of students come in, the expenditures will be roughly double, okay? Expenditures, they're estimating at $6,200,000 for 600 students. If we double that, moves to about 12 million, that break even turns into about a $6 million loss annually. All right, so that's just what happens by correcting this one number. But unfortunately, it gets a little worse. How does the report calculate expenditures? Well, there are a number of different things that we could look at here, but I just want to highlight this paragraph, which is the most striking. All right, let's read here. 450 student population increase would require 7 to 10 additional classrooms. Using the same ratios, 600 new students would require 9 to 13 additional classrooms in addition to the 8 to 10 classrooms that are already needed. This is based on $220,000 per classroom. That's a capital expense cost, comes from the city schools, plus ancillary services. Not sure really how that's calculated, but it's roughly about 50% over the $220,000, and they come up with a range of $2 to $4 million. Okay, but let's take a look at this. 450 student population increase would require 7 to 10 additional classrooms. All right, let's just do a little math here. 450 divided by 7 additional classrooms. How many students are we putting in a classroom? 64 students per classroom. That's obviously way off. And then if we're talking about 10 additional classrooms, that's 45 students per classroom. That's obviously way off too. And if we look at the estimates based on 600 students, ends up being about the same. They're estimating about 45 to 65 students per classroom. That's not going to work. Instead, what we need to do is look at, say, a more reasonable number like 25 students per classroom. But let's go ahead and do both these moves at the same time. Let's get our new high-end estimate, and here I've done it for you. At 25 students per classroom, 450 students would be 18 new classrooms, not 7 to 10. 600 students would be 24 new classrooms, not 9 to 13. And 1,170 new students would be 47 new classrooms, okay, at $220,000 plus ancillary services apiece. Now, just to put this in a little bit of context, 47 new classrooms, that's roughly the equivalent of a new Oakhurst, Claremont, and Winona Park combined.